The following podcast contains discussions about sensitive topics such as domestic violence. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
I just wanted to, find out what happened, from the summary of the story from creating an enemy, or develop, creating is not probably the right word, but from, forming an enemy in this policeman. Yeah. And then you had a number of encounters. He stopped you, a number of run-ins, and then came sort of the big one, and then the court case and all that stuff. So I think just maybe talking us through that sort of part of the story and giving us a summary and a brief.
Yeah, so to set the picture, if you can imagine, I'm running this modelling agency, driving around in a convertible BMW. The number plates flirt because we were sponsored by an American company that had costumes, so they supplied us with all the razzle-dazzle. So I'm driving around and, of course, he pulls me over once, twice, 3 times. Really ridiculous things. Your seatbelt's twisted. You're in the T2 lane with only one person. I mean, that's an offence, but why was he...
The same person as well, catching you doing
right?
this stuff.
How did... And so it just built and built and built. And I went in, of course, to the station and said, can I lodge a complaint? Like, I was so naive. I was like...
You thought that something would happen out of that.
Of course I did. I was like, this is outrageous. You can't do this. I'm going to go speak to his boss.
Yeah.
And I thought I'll march on in and I'll show him. And I was just so naive to the fact that that's just not the way it works in Queensland. And so, they had a good old laugh. And I went in again and they had a good old laugh, and I went in again and they had a good old laugh, and I went, uh-oh, I'm in a bit of strife here. What am I going to do? And it just hit this crisis point where he had come into my home when I was pregnant with my son, and I'm just really fortunate that day I was at a specialist hospital appointment, and it's about the only place on earth I think you can actually prove that you were somewhere where you say you were, because really, you think about it, if you're at the movies or there's not many places you can go where it's largely documented where you are.
And someone will testify that you were there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a specialist.
Yeah, that was a very reputable person verified that you were there. So I guess this police officer has come into your house and arrested you for driving when you weren't, taken you away. You were 7 months pregnant, is that right?
4.5.
4.5 months pregnant. Sorry, you were 2 months premature.
That's right.
So looking at this scenario, you've been ripped out of your house in cuffs, paraded around in front of your neighbours and the local cafe, embarrassed, taken to the police station, unlawfully. Then that is already a very traumatic thing to go through. But then you were pregnant. You then had a child 2 months early. I think that this was sort of like the catalyst for so much that happened then on and really changed the course of your whole life. Then multiple times you then tried to, get justice. And really what this book is about is the fight for justice. And so ultimately you do get justice, you do win, and you are vindicated. And I think that for people who read the book, you'll see that it is just such a shit fight and such a big effort to get that justice. What was that like, going from leaving prison, wanting to then get justice, and your life basically falling apart at the same time? Because that's what I see, is like everything just fell apart.
It did. Every aspect of my life fell apart. And it wasn't just that my business wasn't moving forward or that my health was deteriorating. It was literally, when sometimes life goes out of balance. So your relationships are not going so good because you're focusing on work, or your business is, and then your business is really pumping, so you're happy about that. Or, you're not spending much time at the gym and your health and you're feeling a bit flat and because you've been spending a lot of time with your mates but your social life's thriving. Like we all, have this balance. This it's a delicate dance to have balance in life. But when you are in a situation where there's every aspect of your life has flatlined, that's where the challenge is, because I couldn't say, oh, well, I'm just going to focus on my work. Oh, well, I'm just going to go to the gym. It's like everything was flatlined. Everything was rock bottom. So there was no place I could hook onto for air, if you know what I mean. It was really, the feeling, it was like being discombobulated. It was like I was in this abyss of nothingness with no stable rock to hang on to. That was the feeling I got. It was really disorientating is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, well, I mean, then going from I'll actually get you to read. Do you mind reading a bit of this book?
Yeah, sure.
Read this part here.
It's been a while.
Yeah, just read the highlighted bit, and I've just rather than turning the page over, I've just
really
written
done
the
your
last.
homework. I'm impressed.
Just have a read. I want to follow up from this.
What a wound! You're trying to make me cry. Oh, yeah, that's a low point.
Don't have to read it if you don't want to.
No, I will. I'm glad you did because
I'm not trying to be rude here. I just think it's just amazing.
You're being real. You're being real, and that's what I want. But it's funny you've highlighted this because quite a few people, they bring this chapter up or they bring this paragraph up. And you just took me back to that place and I haven't thought about it for a long time. I'll read it.
Okay, good luck.
You're doing your job well. As I was crawling across a football field, very slowly, it hit me. I was crawling across a field with just silver coins in a sandwich bag to buy baby formula. What a place my life had come to. 1 minute, I'm autographing swimsuit calendars and I'm experiencing first-class everything. I'm hobnobbing with celebrities and performing for thousands, literally living my dream. The next, I'm desperately and very painfully crawling across this football field with a baby and just some silver coins in a sandwich bag to buy some baby formula. Things had gone terribly wrong. Yeah. Good on you. You got me.
It got me too.
Yeah.
As a parent, it got me. It was, I think that although it is a very low point, it just shows how far you've come and it highlights what you've achieved from that point.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so impressive about you and makes you so resilient is that the section, the paragraph continues that you just sort of went to put one foot in front of the other. And I think that's the lesson out of that is like just focusing on that next step and not worrying about all these other things you've got to do, just worrying. And you take that simple philosophy of just putting one foot in front of the other to effectively running your own court case and winning against all odds, and quite an impressive story. How did you find that court case? How was that as far as emotionally and spiritually? What did that do for you, that case?
Well, that's a great question because on that, like when you refer to that paragraph, when I'm crawling across the field, what was on my mind was that because I had a toddler and he's like, mummy up, wanted me to carry him, and he was tired. And when you read the book, you'll understand that paragraph, of course, the readers will in context that I had no feeling in my left leg. That's why I was crawling across. And the chapter before explains why I had no feeling in my leg. So I'm crawling across this field, but at all times I was always very present to the fact that I wanted my son to never experience. So I'd say, come on, it's a game, come on, I'm going to beat you, come on, I'll crawl. So in my mind, I'm rock bottom, I've got these coins, I'm crawling across this field, this is humiliating, this is the lowest point of my life. But at the same time, he thought we were playing a game. He thought it was fun. He was laughing. He was just like, mummy's crawling across the field like a lunatic. This is he's a tot. So there are so many times throughout my life where I've been able to mask what's really going on for his benefit. But the crawling was really quite symbolic. When I went through later the legal case, the trial went for 5 days. And it was grueling. It was in the Brisbane. I was living on the Gold Coast, so I had to get little one into kindy really early, get up to be at court, 8:30 in the morning, which was a challenge. And then on, I think it was the third or the fourth day, I'd been cross-examined in the witness box, and the questions they were asking me were just diabolical. They were trying to throw me off. They were asking me, at one point when I was in the witness box, they were asking me about Paris Hilton. Like, that's how ridiculous it got. And I
read that in the book. It didn't make sense.
It made no sense. Like, they were
just trying to distract you with anything, yeah.
Yeah, they were really crazy allegations they were trying to throw at me. And so when I was sitting in the witness box, I just felt like I was getting shot at. It was like a machine gun. Like, they didn't just get the local sort of conveyancing lawyer to come in. They got a woman that's actually now a judge, and she became a judge just shortly after this case. So they didn't get some first year, and they had a team. They had an enormous team. And so on the third or fourth day, I got home and I was exhausted. I was rock bottom. I was how I felt when I was on that field years before, climbing with my coins. Energetically, I was spent. And so what I did was I went, okay, I've got to get up. I've got to get to court. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I was literally at the absolute end. And, okay, I'll have a shower, because a shower for me fixes everything. So I got in the shower and I was that traumatised, I just fell asleep. I woke up to the cold water running on me. I was like fetal position, bottom of the shower. Oh, my gosh, cold. First thing that came to mind was, what time is it? I've missed the day 4. Oh, my God. Like, I was in a panic. And I realised, oh, no, I've still got an hour before I've got to wake up. So I set my alarm, and then I crawled across my bedroom floor and I put the same suit on that I'd worn the day before, crumpled up, creased, and I just slept for the next hour. And I went, I've just got to put it on, get on with it, drive, go to court and face it again. And those 2 moments of crawling have been such a lesson for me that even if you are just crawling or nudging a little bit forward, a little bit forward, a little bit forward, like the mammoth win or goal you can achieve through those little crawling steps is enormous. And I'm a testament to that. And that's why I really do want to share that message, because there are people that see others do great things or big things or what they think are special, smart, important, whatever they think these things are, and they think that it's because someone's got a gift or they've got extra support or they've got more money or they've got all this narrative about why they think that people are doing well. And what I want to speak to is that, no, it's just simply sometimes putting your coins in a bag and crawling. Like, it's putting a crumpled suit on but still showing up for court. You just do it. You just keep going. And that's the message that I've repeatedly not only wanted to share with other people, but I still tell it to myself to this day.
Yeah, the direction matters more than the speed, Like, I hear that as well. And I think that's what you say there would resonate with anyone that's probably, I guess, had a mountain to climb, is just that as long as you're moving in the right direction is the key. Yeah. With what you went through with that trial, which was just unbelievable, and you did it all yourself, once you had achieved that and come away with, as you said, that victory, what psychological, I guess what I'm wanting to ask you about is letting go, and how do you let go of something? Because ultimately, when I read the book, what I think about is that even after getting that victory, I'd still be so furious. And then there's the following for people who are going to read this book. I won't ruin it too much, but then it's not just over there. There's always more, let's just call it needling that they love to do, and just annoying little things, and they won't roll over and just take a beating. So how do you let go ultimately?
Yeah, great question. And I think going over what happened, even with the traumatic event itself and then subsequently the trial, actually going over that and speaking about it and unpacking it and understanding it, like the little things that happened along the way, were all part of the healing process. Like, even example, on the first day, the judge said, kind of, you're in their playground. Like, he was giving
Welcome
me an
to the
out.
jungle.
Yeah, like, I'm just letting you know, P.S., like, you're actually in their playground. So do you really want to go forward? Like, maybe you want to step outside and settle the matter. And I took that as a wink, wink, like, go outside and see what you can get. And they call it a walk away. Like, that's the legal term, let's offer a walk away. And at that point, I honestly would have taken anything. I wanted out. I saw the gigantic team and I wanted out. And it's really funny because this is how the machine works and how arrogant they are. So she gets on the phone because, it's not only up to the person representing the state. They have to get advice. And so they come in and she said, I just have to make a call and see what we can offer you. And I'm thinking, oh, gosh, like,
Anything.
Get me out of the Maya Centre car park, out, And so what really triggered me was she had a notepaper and she got a pen, and I'm thinking, oh, what's it going to be? And she draws this massive zero. Like,
while you're watching?
Yep, she just does a match. I said, she's like, da-da-da-da-da, and she does this huge zero. Nothing. But it wasn't that she said nothing. It was her drawing the zero on the paper.
Wow.
And, like, I don't know why it was that, but it was seeing this big zero. And then my friend said to me, and she's like the salt of the earth, was my son's kindy teacher. And she said, what did they offer you? Like, did they offer anything? And I was like, zero. They offered me nothing. And she goes, like, nothing. And I went, like, not even anything for a Happy Meal. And she goes, like, fuck all. And I went, yes, fuck all, like, zero. But it was the drawing of that zero that did something to me.
Well, it's also that you didn't have zero, like you didn't have anything to lose. I mean, this is where they were foolish in the sense that, 5 or 10 grand probably would have got rid of you. But I think that this is where egos get in the way of what's right and wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And they start playing a game of it's a game. And it becomes a game of winners and losers rather than justice.
Yes.
And it's really frustrating. I've dealt with it myself in business, where people are more interested in a fight than a resolution. And in this case, I think that just seems like such an effort to demoralize you and reduce you. And obviously they were waving a red flag to a bull.
Yeah, they were. And there were times throughout, because I didn't want to, you're in battle. You want to be strong. You want to be stoic. You want to have your face on. And there was a point throughout, and the judge said, how did it feel like to not be able to place your hands on your pregnant stomach when they were handcuffed behind your back? And I was like, what is he doing to me? Because I was so strong. And then I got into this witness box and I was like, why is this judge trying to rattle me? And he started to poke and ask these questions, like, tell me about not being able to put your hands on your stomach when you're pregnant and you felt under threat. So the waterworks, I was shaking. I was it was all coming back to me, but I didn't know. Obviously the judge had made up his mind
from the
at that point,
yeah.
But what he was doing was he was trying to demonstrate that I was still affected by what had happened to me and offer me more compensation, because I was showing that I was still affected by what had occurred. But when the judge was doing that to me, I thought, oh no, even the judge is against me. But I later realised, but it's such a the energy in a courtroom is so intense that sometimes you don't really know what's going on. And even when I went back in to get the decision, he said, I'm ordering in favour of the applicant. And I went,
Is that me?
am I the applicant or the respondent? Like, what? And he's going through it, and I was like, applicant. I made an application against him, then they made an application against me. No, I'm the applicant. I won. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
It took a minute for the penny to drop because it all moved so fast. And I didn't have that, the other side just, it's not like they shook my hand and said, oh, well done, good on you, congratulations. No, they were out of there. Gone.
And this is, I guess, just what I'm I guess getting to is more, like I said, with letting go. Do you have to forgive? Do you have to forgive yourself? Do you have to forgive them? Do you have to? There's people that get stuck in these things, whether it be divorces, whether it be neighbours disputing a fence, and these things ruin lives.
They do.
How do you move past these things? I even actually had the Greens counsellor on a little while ago, and we're talking about reconciliation. I won't get into that subject, but it's a similar sort of thing where sometimes, how do we move past these things that take so much of our life?
Yeah. Sorry, that's where I was going with that. So when I walked out, this guy, the officer, he was at the door. And I decided in that moment, I walked up to him and I said, for what it's worth, once we walk out of here, this is done. Like, I forgive you. And he was sort of looking at me like, what? And I said, no, like, genuinely, I forgive you, because happy people and good men don't do what you did. And so for that, you must be hurting, and for that, I forgive you. And I really did let it go. And I know I wrote a book about it and I'm talking about it now, and it might appear like I haven't let it go, but I have. What people don't let go of, I think, is not necessarily the actual thing. It's the injustice or the wound that is created by the injustice, because then following what happened to me, this is why my story is a little bit confusing, because the first part of my story, I'm taking action against a police officer, and the last half of my story, I'm fighting for a police officer. So I think that speaks to my ability to let go, because why was I in there fighting for a police officer if I had some, issue that I couldn't let go of?
Yeah.
I very much could let go of it.
Yeah, I don't feel that you're and I definitely, you don't come across as someone who hasn't. It's more just that it's a skill and something that I think has so much importance, because I was reading your book and I was thinking about, if you were at a fork in the road, let's say you could go back in time and you were at a fork in the road and that policeman pulled you over in the city there for not wearing a seatbelt, which was ridiculous, and you were driving a fancy car and you were, Miss Bikini World, and does part of you just think, if I had to just rolled over, paid that fine, got on with my life, bought a Camry and just taken my life on a different path, was the justice, I wrote down here, was the justice, is the justice worth it sometimes? Like, is there a point where you think that the justice has a price itself?
Yeah, the cost.
The cost of the justice.
Yeah, what is the cost?
Emotionally, those years, the time that you spent with your child, having a child in those conditions, all those things, becoming a single mother, was the justice worth it? Is the justice worth it? How does that reconcile with you?
Yeah, well, I think, people are just who they are. And part of resilience, I've always thought, is like your ability to eat a shit sandwich. Okay, so some people, let's say people in column A, they get given a shit sandwich and they eat it and they go, oh, this is gross. I just bit into a shit sandwich. That's disgusting. Ugh. They wash their mouth out with some mouthwash. They brush their teeth and they're like, oh, I had a shit sandwich. Gross. That's the end of it. Then you've got people in column B, they get given a shit sandwich and they say, that's disgusting. That's a shit sandwich. Who served me a shit sandwich? Furthermore, who made that shit sandwich? I want to know who's making and serving shit sandwiches. In fact, I want to make sure no one's ever going to get a shit sandwich again. I'm getting to the bottom of the shit sandwich factory. I appear to be the person that wants to get to the bottom of the shit sandwich factory, you know?
How do you pick your battles though?
Oh, that's something I've learned, because as a result of the publicity that came from my matter, every single person that had a problem with police or even just any injustice at all, you name it, they were coming to me in droves. And then I had a massive lesson in setting boundaries and saying no, and anyone that struggles to say no, it's because we want to be liked. We want people to think that we're a nice person. If we say no,
Yeah.
you know, maybe they're going to think this about me and that about me. And so I had a real problem with boundaries, setting boundaries, saying no, because I'd gone through the trauma. I was in that rock bottom, and there was a part of me that genuinely didn't want anyone else to hit the kind of lows that I did. So part of me was like, I want to help.
Of course. Moving, I guess, forward after your case, with your relationship with the Queensland Police, did anything further come of that, like with relation to the police? And now that you're a figure as such, because you've taken on another case with Rick Flory, wasn't it? Yeah, which we'll talk about in a second. But how did your relationship with the Queensland Police, like, where did that go to?
Well, you know, the moment you speak up about that, you know, it's very easy for them to create this narrative that you hate police or that you're anti-police, and I wasn't. I was never anti-police, and I fought really hard to say, no, I don't have a problem with police. I've got a problem with this guy.
Yeah.
And I've got a problem with the oversight body, or lack thereof, of the police. Like, there were different parts of this story that I had a problem with, but I was very aware of the fact that it would suit them to make out that I was some crazy anti sort of police. And so I think I went the other way to make a point that I'm not. I made that point.
So how did you make the bridge from that case, ending that, winning that, to, I guess, being involved in the legal side of things, and then getting this, I guess, whistleblower case? What's the transition there? How did that all – because you've basically gone from self-representing, you know, single mum, winning a case, to now taking on this other matters. What was the process?
Yeah, it was so bizarre, and that's why sometimes I think, do we choose these situations or do they choose us? I don't know, but what had happened was there was a boy that had been bashed in Surfers Paradise by police, and he was saying, his story was, they just plucked me out of nowhere. Like, they just came up to me, asked me for ID, and like I gave it to them, and they said, called me, you know, all these horrific things. It was really appalling.
Was it racially charged?
Yeah, it was disgusting. And then they said, you're going to come with me. And so they took him into the basement of the Surfers Paradise police station, and they beat him to unconsciousness. They beat him to a pulp. And he sat with me and he talked me through, and he's telling me what happened, what they said, what he said. Keeping in mind at that point, I'd heard so many stories. I'm a super intuitive person. I've also
So how did you, get involved though? Like, what was
with that guy that got social media just
someone just
tagged,
contacted you,
tagged and said, this is, you know, to this guy,
Wow.
this is what happened. But it stood out because I'd get a lot of people coming to me, but for some reason, I don't know why, but when his name was there, it was like in bold. For me, it was, I don't know, I was drawn to it intuitively. And so I spoke to him when he took me through it, and he said, no one's going to believe this. No one is going to believe it. And for some reason I did. I believed what he was telling me. And then I said, well, we're going to have to go in and watch this footage, go to the council and see if we can have a look from start to finish what happened. And the day we went in, he was so nervous. He said to me, maybe something's wrong with me, and I've just told you what I thought happened. And
he started doubting himself?
He doubted himself. And I said, no, you told me the story. It's fine. And I said, it doesn't matter. Like, let's watch the footage and then we'll know. And he was going, could I have got this all wrong? Like the self-doubt that came over him, he was shaking, he was a wreck. We got in there, we viewed the footage. It was to the minute exactly what he said happened, and it was frightening. And it became even more apparent as I dug further
How old
into
was
it.
this kid?
Early 20s, single dad, great life, full-time chef, had a little girl, 50-50 custody, great relationship with the mother. His whole life went to ground zero, complete ground zero over this. And what was not interesting, that's not the right word, but after they beat him up so badly, had so much blood in his eyes, he got transferred to the watch house in Southport. And the officer that had beaten this guy so badly that he couldn't even see for the blood in his eyes came into the watch house and said to him, I can't believe what's happened to you. Apparently over at surface, you got beaten up really bad. It's disgusting. Police can't do this. Do you want to talk to me about what happened? What did you remember? What did you see? And it was the guy that did it. It was the guy that was, brutal. So what had happened was the video of him in the basement of Surfers Paradise was leaked to the media. Nobody knew who at the time, but it was an internal police video.
When it was it leaked to you or was it leaked to the media?
To the media.
Right.
To the media.
Wow.
Yeah. And so obviously we later know that it was a police officer that leaked that internal video to the media.
Of the basement car park.
Of the basement.
Wow.
Which was critical. As a result of him leaking that video, they then came for him like I've never seen a tank truck come at somebody like what they came at this police officer.
So the police officer who was the whistleblower who leaked this footage now is in the gun and he's in trouble. He's in trouble for what, breaching the privacy of the police station?
No, facing misconduct in public office. They changed the charge along the way. Originally it was to cause a detriment, and then they later charged it to receive a benefit. So the wording of the charges changed, but it was an absolute witch hunt. They raided his house. They completely went through his life like you would not believe. That's
unbelievable. So you were there by his side to help him through that then?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I was there. I thought originally it was really...
They must have loved seeing your face again.
They did not. Yeah. It was very organic how it came about. He was a good guy. He reported a lot of what he was seeing. This was not the first time that he had tried to speak up.
Improve the system.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy. He tried to speak up, but I think through this legal process, they got wind of other things that he was speaking up about, and he was courageous enough to speak up about people in very high places and people that had power, and they then used that power against him enormously.
Where's the corruption at now? Like, where would this happen again today? Are we making any inroads?
I thought we were making inroads because I later then had a second case, a successful privacy matter, because as a result of all of this happening and all of the people I then supported through their various journeys, 2 new privacy laws were introduced as a result of the action I took and the evidence that I gave at the Crime and Corruption Commission inquiry into privacy.
Yeah. Do we need to have more educated people as well? Like, I know that now you're versed in the law. You understand it a lot better than the average Joe. Is that at the best self-defense against this stuff, is understanding the law a bit better? Do you think people could get a lot further if they knew how the game, not even so much the law, I think that might even be a stretch, is really, I think the way the game is played is more actually
absolutely
the rules of the game.
Absolutely. There's that, yes, and knowing your own rights, being confident in yourself to say this is not right or no, or hang on a minute, just having the courage to ask the question if something's not right. But then it goes a little bit further than that, in that you have to look at all of the different people that you go to when you've got a problem. The amount of times I went to the police minister or the shadow minister or the minister for women. There's politicians that get paid really well for this to be their portfolio. And every single matter that I've been involved with, I do not have one success story I can tell you that, I went to the police minister and he did this.
You got to push.
Yep. And I saw the police minister recently. He was talking about how he supports the police and how he's right behind them. And he really hang on a minute. You're the police minister. You're supposed to
keep them in check, balance it,
right?
Watch it, make sure it's being run correctly.
But in his mind, he's there for the police. Good on him for being there for the police, but he's there to represent us, the people, to the police. He's not just there to be a police spokesperson. That's what the police union's for. They've got someone to speak for them. There should be a separation in government between the police minister and, and the police.
Yeah. Well, hopefully some change is coming out of all that. I mean, it's a tale as old as time, isn't it? The abuse of power. I do hope that now it's getting a bit better. With this case and everything now, do you feel that this is now your purpose? Like, do you feel that this is your calling or?
No.
No?
No, definitely not. No. I've definitely closed a chapter on, I get inquiries all the time and I just refer them. Definitely not. I've done it. I've been there. I've done it. I've won it. I'm proud. I hit the bottom. I hit the top and everywhere in between. But for me, that chapter is closed. It really is closed. It's like I felt really called and I felt that it was what I was supposed to be doing. I don't know why. It's just how I felt. And now I feel like it's not. And there's no reason about that. It's just I've done it to death.
It's also, I think that the war rages. Do you feel like that? Like, I feel that the war rages, whether it be, injustices, whether it be the fighting is exhausting.
Oh.
It's exhausting and there are no real winners. Like, I look at your case and I just, as I said before, I want, you never have regrets. Mostly, you kind of, if you're happy and you're happy with your life, you generally don't regret anything that's happened to you. You generally take it as, well, that's what's made me who I am. You have that sort of viewpoint, which I imagine you do. And I don't imagine that you sit there thinking about the what ifs too much. But when fights happen and whether it be between people, between organizations, between countries, the energy is so awful and there's really no winners a lot of the time. Even when you win, there's that ugly feeling that you have to live with for having gone through. Even anyone will tell you even the slightest road rage incident, you get that sort of rush of adrenaline. It's awful. Every time you yell at your children or yell at your parents, or it's just an ugly thing. And I think when you get involved with the art of fighting, which is pretty much the art of administrative fighting, which is what lawyering is. I find it to be soul-destroying stuff, and when you're incentivized by the fight rather than the victory, it's quite an awful game to play.
What happens is you have this lawyer, you pay them a lot of money, and you think that they are going to be your spokesperson, your warrior. They've got the sword out. They take the weight off your shoulders because you're paying them, right? And that's what they do. But you enter a brand new game with the lawyers. So quite often people find they're in two separate battles. They're in one, cat and mouse with the lawyer, and they're in another with the actual original matter that they had. So they're trying to duck and weave around the lawyer and go, is he just trying to get more money out of me here? Or I don't really think that advice that he gave me doesn't make sense, but I don't want to ask him. I don't want to piss him off because he's on my side and I want to stay in good with him. And the lawyers are manoeuvring and working out how they can better their own position in a matter. So quite often people, I'd say more often than not, the people that I've been involved with have ended up with more anger and trauma and rage against their own lawyers than they had the initial thing that happened to them. So that's a really interesting little niche.
Well, 9 times out of 10, when I talk about obviously having worked with previously in advice and dealing with families and dealing with husband and wives and divorces and splitting of assets, 9 times out of 10, I would say that if you could go back in time and just say, take all my stuff, just take it all now, and let's not have the fight.
Yep.
A lot of people would actually just go down that path. The fight is the part that makes the result doesn't change. The only thing that happens is the hurt and the cost. So people end up pretty much where they would get to if they got a really bad deal. It's like, take a really bad deal now or take a really bad deal in 5 years after you've got 1 million grey hairs, lost all your weight and had all these sleepless nights,
Yep.
Now, having said that, I'm sure there's lawyers listening that would say, that's not how it works, and that's, you're looking at it but I'd say that there are certain issues where the legal side of things can really, or getting lawyers involved can complicate things rather than simplify things.
It can complicate it. There are some instances where it can bring relief, either emotionally or financially, or that sense of justice. And something that came to mind when you were speaking about that, a matter where I supported the person. So there was a really ugly perpetrator of domestic violence, and anyone that knows about domestic violence, quite often you're dealing with someone with narcissistic personality disorder or behaving in a narcissistic way. And it's very, very difficult for the victims to catch their breath and to have a go back when they've been beaten down for so long. And there was a case I was involved in, and I was supporting the victim, and we came to court and the lawyer said, you know what, we're just going to agree to a cross order, which means he had an order against her and she had an order against him. And I'd seen the history of abuse that this person had, been exposed to. It was off the charts. I could not believe that the other person had been getting away with it for so long. And the lawyers got together and they're like, yeah, you know what? Like, what's the time? Oh, it's 10:30. You know what? Will you agree to cross order? Will you agree to cross? Let's everyone agree to be good to each other, and we'll all go our ways. And I could see this person was so traumatized by what had happened, and I remembered her rock bottom in the office, and I said to her, I know what you want to do right now is get in your car and you just want to run it through the foyer of that building, and you're so full of rage and you're so full of grief. And I really articulated what I knew she was feeling, and her eyes opened like, oh my gosh, you see me. It was a real moment. And I really wanted her to know, I got ya. I see it. Don't worry, I see it. Because I'm a big believer that pain and grief needs a witness. It needs a witness. Otherwise, if you can't have someone else see or feel what you've been through, it is very difficult to process it yourself and move it through. So the second that she saw, no, I see you, I saw this look in her lot. It was like, oh my gosh, this is the first time. So when we fast forward and we go into these lawyers like, yeah, let's just get a cross application. She can have one against him and he has one against her. I went, no. Because what has happened to her is unacceptable. He should be put in the witness box and he should be cross-examined. And he was. It just shone a light on behaviour.
So with the cross order, it would have been ordered, but no one would have been actually able to hear.
That's right.
What I assume he had done.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was just him agreeing to be nice to her and her agreeing to be nice to him. And that was his, tactic. And I could see that was not going to be good for her, not just in the sense that it was unfair, but what was happening to her was not being acknowledged. So, but the lawyers were just like, I want to get out of here. It's 10:30. We can be done by lunch. Let's just agree. And so I then got in a, let's call it robust conversation with the lawyer and said, no, we're going to push on with this.
What's your role in that? Are you there what's your professional capacity in this?
Well, no, I was just supporting the victim.
And this is where I guess what we were saying before more about with the lawyers and these situations and understanding the way the game works. A lot of people don't have Renee in their corner, you know, and that's where I think if we look at it as a personal responsibility thing, you know, ultimately the only answer here is to really learn. And if you're in this situation, is to get some knowledge about it, you know, because I imagine there's some resources out there, but I know that I've been in situations, some legal situations where I've walked in and out of a courtroom and just come out with my head spinning and not even sure what happened. I just know I felt terrible afterwards.
What happened? Who said what? Why?
Why
to
did
who?
I a quick story. I put my hand up to be a witness to a car accident, whereas I saw this car accident occur. No one hurt. It was pretty minor. And the insurance company got in contact with me to be a witness, and I walked in and out of the room and got cross-examined, just totally demoralised and destroyed and made a fool of. And I left thinking, why did I even try to help? You know, it's like that expression, you know, every good deed, no good deed goes unpunished. That's what I was thinking that day. I had nothing to do with this. I was
No agenda,
just
nothing,
trying to help
no
out,
finger in the
and just
pie.
got absolutely wrecked in the courtroom. And I walked out of there thinking, okay, well, I had no idea what was going on. And that's what I think a lot, like for me, that was nothing on the line. But if something serious was on the line and you're in the right, it'd be awful.
Well, you know, I say to people, and in that scenario, and part of it, and anyone who's had anything to do with me through the matters, they'll know, like, sense of humour is absolutely, like, paramount. I'm such a joker, and in the most serious situations, you know, I'll find something. A judge once said, "Do you guys have enough water over there?" And I said, "Oh, to drink or to throw on him?" And you know, she had a bit of a giggle. Like, you can find lighter moments in the dark, but in that matter I was just speaking to where they were having the cross order, I said, no, get him in the witness box. The light got shone like never before on this person. The footage got played.
Wow.
We happened to get this judge that was just a wrecking ball. And the finding that he gave, I was like, my goodness.
What happens in a situation like that? So you've got a husband and wife situation, man violently abusing the partner. You go to court. What's an outcome of what's the result in that case?
Well, in that case, it was so covert and the abuse was so calculated and cunning and snaky, and it was very clever the way he was going about it. And that's why it wasn't, you know, victims of abuse or domestic abuse will say, I would just love to be punched. Give me a black eye, break my ribs, because I'll walk into a doctor and I'll just say, look what happened to me. But the worst kind of abuse is so much more than that. Like a black eye or a broken rib is a luxury compared to emotional torture. And that's what was happening to this woman. And it was very, very difficult to try
Put
and
a finger on it.
Yeah, but what happened was once he started getting cross-examined in the witness box and he started getting a light shone on him, that part of him, you know, that part of his personality, surprisingly, even shocked me, it rose. And I said, just let him speak. Just let him speak. And, you know, the
Give
lawyer.
him enough rope.
Yep, the lawyer kept wanting to jump in, and I said, shh, 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 just let him. He's digging himself here. And so he had such an adverse finding against him, and the woman walked out, and she said, this is euphoric. I have been abused for so many years. This is the first time I feel it's truly been acknowledged. Now, was that my doing? No. You know, it was a collective effort. It was me seeing her that day in the office and saying, I see your pain. It was me having experience in the legal industry and seeing lawyers want to get out quickly and say to them, no, you're going in and you're going to push on. It was a group effort. You know, the lawyer did a great job of cross-examining this guy. We got the right judge. It was just a perfect storm. But the relief and acknowledgement that woman got, I can tell you, she is now she is doing phenomenal things.
A bit like the acknowledgement you got. I guess the acknowledgement you get at the end of something like this, and at least being able for someone with authority to say, you are right, you are correct, you have been hurt, you have been wrong has been done to you, and it's the acknowledgement, the compensation, and all the rulings. I think there is so much value in the acknowledgement and like you said, being seen and being heard. It's amazing. What's your, I guess, I've seen that clip of you on, and I'll put it on the screen, of you saying using domestic violence and petty, was it? Oh
yeah.
What's that from?
That was from the project, I think. Was it when I said you can't use petty and domestic violence in the same sentence?
It was something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
To hear the word petty DV matter in the same sentence, that's like saying a gentle murder, a subtle rape. You don't put DV and petty in the same sentence in this country when more than one woman a week is dying of domestic violence. It's disgusting.
An officer had said to a woman, and she recorded him, because she was just up against brick walls every time, and in defence of the police, they are so under-resourced. They are so worked to the bone at the moment. They are themselves in a world of hurt. They're scrambling. There's no word about it. Anyone that says anything other than that is not telling the truth. They're drowning. And so she calls, this is quite a while ago, she'd called this officer, and it was a horrendous story. That's why it was on the project. And she'd spoken to this officer, and it was, I don't know, maybe the 10th call. And he said, and it was a really serious situation she was in. And he said, I am not dealing with your petty little domestic violence matter again. And she recorded it. And, the project ran a whole piece on her entire story. And, yeah, that's why I was on there saying you just don't say petty and domestic violence in the same sentence.
It's wild. What is the state of play with these things? Obviously, you've had some experience with domestic violence out there, and you're an advocate for this type of stuff. What's happening? What's happening in the world right now where we've got such a problem with this? And I think the statistics are sort of one woman every, well, you'd know better than I do.
Yeah, more than one woman a week in Australia is dying.
It's unbelievable. And I think that there's a collective storm going on, like you've said, you've got this, you've got, relationships are tough. Single parenting, as you're doing, is tough. Police are understaffed. I would say that even if they were fully staffed, they've probably lost a bit of control of what's happening at the moment. And their ability to help and intervene has been limited as well.
Oh, yeah. We're in the perfect storm right now. Like, we can see it at the moment. Look, I mean, politically, and I've been asked so many times to get involved in politics, and strangely, like, I can't stand it, yet every subject I'm passionate about and I talk about and I've got something to say about is quite political. So I can understand why people say get into politics. The reason why I say, ooh, yuck, that's disgusting, is because I relate politicians to taking everything and doing nothing. So I almost take it as I'm quite offended.
An insult.
An insult.
Don't call me a politician.
Call me a politician, yeah. But I understand, because people see that I'm passionate about these subjects: domestic violence, youth crime, police misconduct, all the things that are troubling society at the moment. I've had experience with, and I'm very passionate about, so I can see where the nexus comes from. Although my experience with politicians actually being helpful and useful is nothing. I can't even give. I'm racking my brain to think of one time where I've gone to see a politician and I can tell you that I had a great outcome for myself or on behalf of anyone else I've supported. So
it's such a conundrum that politicians need to make the change, or we need the politicians to make the change.
Yeah.
Like, that's where change happens, through politics and policy. And unfortunately, everyone that's actually effective and, can actually get something done.
Yep.
When they go into politics, they become impotent.
Yeah, right.
And ineffective. And we champion someone into politics.
Yep.
And we see, this guy is going to be the person that makes a change. Unfortunately, by the time when you get into politics, the machine is. I still don't understand it myself. That's why I'm talking to politicians on this podcast is I still want to know whether it is the system or whether it is the people that are running the system. People have told me that it's not the system, that it's just the people that are in there. But I know there's a lot of good people in there as well. And I can't explain why we do have a situation. It's not just the Queensland. I know we mentioned Queensland, but it's not just Queensland. It's nationally. There's a massive problem right around the country, and you could even argue around the world.
Well, yes, but my take on it is politics is essentially the game of snakes. So to even survive in that environment, you have to slip and slide a certain way for your own survival. Now, if you get a person that's full of empathy and heart and feels and, really cares and wants to help the people and do all these wonderful things, usually you don't get a person that can slip and slide and snake and duck and weave with that low vibration mud slinging. Those two don't go together. So you almost need these unique people that really do care, that have maybe perhaps been through some of these things themselves. They have real life experience, maybe a little bit of education in that matter too. I don't know, like a little bit of a mix of everything. And then they get in for all the right reasons. But I think what happens is at the moment what I see, they get enough just to get in because they've got to play the game even to get in the door. And that game's not a clean game either. If anyone that's
True.
ran a I've helped people campaign and, helped politicians, and I've seen what happens in the lead up to an election, and that in itself, before you even get in, it's dirty. It is absolutely dirty. So you've got to win the dirty game before you even get in to play the dirty
That's
game.
right, yeah.
And so you're in this dirty game. How do you do good things, right things, heartfelt things? How do you fight for people when you're in a dirty game yourself? And I think that's what happens. They get lost in their own dirt.
I think that the fact that it's a popularity contest in itself makes for the problem. And if we don't have the culture, if we don't have the education, for me, I guess I put the weight of the problem on education and individual responsibility. So I look at the things that we've sort of dealt with, and the things that got you through this are really, understanding the truth about the world, understanding that no one can really manipulate you anymore, knowing your enemies, knowing who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. And then once that all sort of makes sense to you, you're like, oh, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, this is what I need to do to live a happy life. I need to do A, B, and C. And I think where we're at the moment is we've got this whirlwind of aberrant culture coming through, whether it be through social media. We've got it getting into the higher levels of whether it be in politics. You see politicians behaving very badly. I was watching Question Time the other day, and it was like watching a class of, grade 5 kids.
What were they doing?
They were just arguing about electric vehicles. And it wasn't so much the subject matter, but just the speaker having to say, quiet down, stop yelling, and everyone yelling and laughing. And then he said, someone said, oh, we could whisper, and then they're going, and they're making jokes. And I just thought, I think this is where the problem lies, is we are relying on others to lead us out of this, where it's actually going to be a group individual responsibility. And I think everyone taking responsibility for themselves. I'm not saying everyone can. I'm saying everyone needs to be encouraged to. You know what I mean?
I do know, and you're dot on. But I think what happens is, in whether it be politics or you look at the courts, I often refer to these places. I went down to Parliament House with a friend that had issue over like the last election, and so we went down to Parliament House to deal with it. And I said, if people aren't diving down into the sewer and cleaning out what's happening, how are we ever going to improve all of these problems we've got now? It needs good people, honest people, people that want to make change, people that are in it for the right reasons. We need those people to go in. But those kind of people are not so interested in being involved and surrounding themselves with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, real great leaders are not I never woke up wanting to be leaders. They are called, and I agree with that. I think that that also, it's like the people that you want, the people that run the best businesses with the best cultures, they're the guys that you want in there. Unfortunately, they don't want to be in there because they'd be very alone in a place like that, where the culture is one of do as little as you can, be as inefficient as possible. Hide behind any, any little sort of, I guess, rule, and it's very.
Any loophole they can find.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more about it's not about productivity and positivity,
No, it's how to just keep the let's call it wheel going. How can we keep this wheel spinning?
And grow the wheel. Like it's so overweight in its resources. It's so gluttonous in what it produces and how it gets a job done.
But then every now and then you get someone that comes along. Clive Palmer just funded an action. It was just handed down recently. I don't know if you saw it
with
yesterday.
the vaccine.
Yeah, it was massive. It was massive. And Senator Babette, he's fantastic, so humble. He was making really good money in his business. He's in property. He'll tell you he's not in there because he wants to be a politician. He saw a problem. He wanted to be part of the solution, and he went in for all the right reasons. He's taken a loss in what he's being paid, and he's doing great things, like a super humble guy.
Well, then do you think that that it isn't more a matter of getting a balance in there then? So maybe you should be a politician then.
Part of me, I'm at war with myself over this, because part of me, half of myself is like, I want to get in there and this is so wrong and I can't believe what they're doing and this needs to be cleaned up, and I know I've got what it takes. But then the other part of me knows the cost of battle, and I reflect back to my old life when I had shows and I was travelling and performing, and the camaraderie of the team and the business, and I spent a lot of time laughing, a lot of time, there were times where I'd just be rolling around the floor and tears are coming down my eyes because one of the girls has fallen off the stage, or just, traveling
joy.
10 hours, joy. Yeah, joy. And you ask yourself in these matters, whether they be legal or political, like how often is joy able to be inserted? Okay, I felt good when I supported that lady that I was speaking about earlier. Of course I felt good, that she was vindicated and that she was finally heard and that she's now moving on with her life. It was a moment of yes, okay. But it was, it hit my heart and I feel good about it. But previously in my business, 90% of the time I was happy. I was happy, ferociously happy.
Do you think that as there's a, the more you understand about as you become more able and as you become more conscious, it's very hard then to not see things that you can do something about.
Oh, this is my biggest. This is my current. This is my current lesson, challenge, calling. Because people will come to me with something and they're like, "Oh, you can't believe what will happen." I think, "Oh my gosh, I could with one letter, one phone call. Like, to me, it's easy.
That's why I get back to the education point. I think that, ultimately we can't be relying on our leaders. It's going to take a long time before the world comes out, even if it's going to be 50 years. I mean, a lot of people, the majority of their lives is going to be done in 50 years, even if it's 20 years.
It's true.
We need to make sure that, I think anyway, and that's why things like this podcast and there is a lot more access to good information out there. And I think that with social media, people can put out information to a broad audience and mass communicate, which is great. But I always go back to that point of, if everyone's looking after their own, and I know there's always going to be a need for charity, and there's always going to be a need for there's going to be destitute, and there's going to be people who find themselves in tragic situations and circumstances. What I've noticed over the last 10 years of my life is that people who need charity, people who need help, was a smaller percentage of the population. What we need to stop is this ever expanding group of people that are dealing with violence, dealing with homelessness, dealing with unemployment, dealing with trauma. We need to somehow focus on minimizing that and be a charitable society at the same time, but minimize the growth of that.
Yep. No, I hear you in that, but I think that is such a large challenge, because what's happening at the moment, and we're seeing them go down like dominoes. I think when I say them, I'm talking about the leaders. We just saw the police commissioner, the premier, the minister for health. They're going, dung, 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 dung. They're going. They're falling. I haven't seen a shuffle like this since the Fitzgerald inquiry in Queensland. Like, they're falling. But what I see happening is, okay, you talk about your water. When your cup's full, you're then able to help more people, because you've had a drink and
Sure.
you're all right, and you want your cup to overfill so that you can, feed other people, give other people water. What's happening at the moment, I feel, is that so many people are under so much pressure. The walls are closing in. They're tightening and tightening and tightening. As a result of that, we've got relationship breakdowns. We've got mental health issues. We've got financial crises. That's why we're seeing road rage. That's why we're seeing youth crime in record numbers that we've never seen before. When the walls start to close in so tightly, everyone is so busy trying to just make sure that they've paid their rent or their mortgage, or just keeping on top of their own world, that there's really not much excess in the tank to reach out to the neighbour, to reach out to the friend. There's less people at the moment that are overfilling to make up for the shortfall of people that are dropping. And it's very, very apparent. You see right now, it's like squeeze, and something has got to give, because when people get desperate, they steal. When people are angry, they become violent. When people are lost, they do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. So if society and the way that we're operating is not functioning effectively, we're actually all going to be victim to whatever's going to happen, whether that be our car stolen, our child involved in whatever. It's inevitable if we don't come together.
Well, we all live together, so you're absolutely right. That's why everyone is concerned about these issues. They don't just affect, like, if we talk about, say, youth crime, it affects everyone. If we talk about drug addiction, it affects everyone, right?
Yeah.
No one wants, because that wave is still, you might be able to protect yourself, but it's still in your society, and you still don't want to see it. And if you've got a heart, you don't want people to live like that. Do you feel there's a wave coming? Like, do you feel that there's a change in the air? Is that what you're sort of saying?
I absolutely feel it. I've got a teenage son, and the past year, I've got to say, has been the most challenging. Honestly, the past year for me has made that book look like a fairy tale.
Wow.
It's been a real challenge. And what I'm noticing, and I even spoke to a mum last night, that they are taking parental rights away. Now, this started back at, even if you want to go far back as dare I even speak about it, it's like I said, I'll never talk about this topic again, the pandemic. I just can't even bring myself to think and talk about that subject again because we've all done it to death. But that was a real fork in the road for everyone. And I think what happened at that point was they started saying, okay, these kids have the medical apps on their phone and that, if they want to go off and get vaccinated and the parent didn't agree with it or did agree with it or whatever was in the family, it divided families. It literally put a slice down the middle of so many families because they took away the parent's right to say yes or no. It became, okay, the child can decide. And it's become so woke now that they're giving the reins or the steering wheel to these kids that are like 14, 15, 16, 17. I'm not saying they don't need to learn independence and know how to lead and, we don't have to give them a little bit of rope so that they can grow as human beings. But that's such a vulnerable age where they actually need boundaries. They need to know, okay, you've been on your phone a bit too much. It's midnight. You got to get up for school in the morning. Come on, pull it in. And if they don't listen, hey, put your phone on the shelf or I'm taking your phone off you for the next day because you didn't listen to me. But we're getting into this complete imbalance of where the rights of these youths has become so much more important than the people that they're affecting, the homes that are getting broken into, the people that are getting stabbed, the fear that is rippling through, the drug addiction. If you're a person that wants to stand up and say, no, this is not okay, we need to rein it in, the system is not supporting parents to rein anything in. Literally, there is nothing I believe at the moment with the way it is, once a child is 14, 15, you've got if you can't pull it in, the system is not going to pull it in. It just gives chance after chance after chance. It's good to give people chances, but we also need to learn consequences for actions. And it can't be that you go out and stab someone and you just do 10 years. It can't be that way.
Well, it's Orwellian, really, is what I think of with the 1984 George Orwell. I'm not sure if you've read it, but the book about the state taking over everything. And what I feel is that's a replacement of government over parent. And in the book, there's a scene where the parents are talking bad about the government and the kids dob the parents in and the guards come and take their parents away.
Wow.
It's a classic, very well-known book. And when someone says that's Orwellian, that's where the term comes from. A lot of schools read it in that 1984. But I think this idea of anything that gets in the way of the directive is what concerns me. It's like we have this sort of governmental ideal. And if the parents disagree with that, we want them out the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we want that line going straight to the child. And so we don't want any interference by the sports club. We don't want any interference by the family. We don't want any interference by the church. We don't want any interference. So these organisations that are barriers to the child's information that might give them an alternative view of the world, which was once a traditional view of the world, now they just want the child to have the government view. And so I think that that's quite scary in the sense that, your child at 15 can go and make medical decisions, or that your child at 16 can do things that they wouldn't ordinarily and they'd need their parents' permission for. But they still need to be 18 before they can drive, 18 before they can have a beer, 18 before they can do a lot of other things. But yet these mandated arbitrary decisions about what the government particularly feels. And then I think the other problem that you have is that do you mind if we talk a little bit about what's happening with your son? Or
yeah, no, that's
I think,
fine.
Look, I know that you just said it yourself that the year you've had with your son has been harder than this, which says something. I didn't realise it was quite that bad.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, have you lost control? Have you lost the rights? Have you lost? How does that relate to the police being involved?
Absolutely. I mean, my son's the love of my life. You know, we're like peas and corn. We are just, because it's always just been him and I. And I've always been very aware of the fact that, you know, his home, it's our safe place. I made the conscious decision to not repartner when he was small. I didn't want men coming in and out of my house. And no disrespect to anyone that repartners or decides to date, you know, when everyone's got a right to repartner. But I just felt I just wanted his home to be his place and my place. You know, if I wanted to go on a date, I could. I'd go out for dinner, go out for lunch, whatever I could date, but I wasn't bringing men home. And as a single parent, you're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't, because if you don't have like a full-time male, people will say, oh, you know, but they don't have like a man around all the time to pull them into line. And then if you were dating, it'd be like, oh, there's so many men coming and going, like they don't know what's going on. So like no matter whether you sort of introduce males into your life or you keep them at bay, as a single parent, I know the judgment is just next level, and you sort of, it doesn't matter which way you go, you know, people have got something to say. But for us, I personally made the choice just to keep our home for, you know, him and I. But he's amazing. He wanted to get into law. He was doing work experience at a law firm, close to straight A's, debating, soccer, like just absolutely, this kid's killing it. Like walks into a room, lights it up. And then he got mixed up last year with some kids that were just not good. And I started to, you know, tighten the rope, or try to. And it just became so difficult. And, you know, he's very clever in the sense that he said to me, oh, I saw this story or a meme or something. It was about an elephant. And he's telling me this story. I'm thinking, where's he going with this? He decided this one night on a school night he was going to go stay at the casino. And I found out he was there. And I said, 16? Absolutely not. You've got an exam tomorrow. It's a Tuesday night. And I think any parent would have an issue with that. Like it's a licensed venue. It's not okay. It's not a place for a 16-year-old. And I was like, no. And so I got my friend and her husband and I went, you know, we're going to go in and we're going to say, can you tell us, like, how's a teenager staying here? Anyway, they knock on the door. They say, we get ID. And they said, oh, well, no, he shouldn't be staying here. And I said, yeah, that's right. Send him down, thanks. I'm going to be taking him home. And here I am just thinking it's just plain and simple. Like, to me, that's a plain and simple story. You're underage, you're 16, you can't stay in a licensed venue. Get your butt home.
And you're my child.
And you're my child, game over.
Yeah.
So, no. I get in there and they say, oh, we'll ask for ID. Oh, he's got a friend in there that's actually 15. You know, there's some minors in there. And I'm like, well, what are they doing in there? Call their parents. Like, this is ludicrous. Oh, because there's like, you know, underage kids in there, we now have to call the police. And I thought, oh no, not again. You know, you mentioned that word to me. I was just like, look, maybe we can deal with this. Everybody just needs to calm down. I just didn't want him to be here on a school night, not trying to make a thing out of it. You know, I was trying to, at that point, tiptoe back. Like,
sure.
We don't need to call the police. And then the police turn up and I think that they're going to say, you know, give the kids the marching orders. And they come down and they say, oh, you should see the suite these kids are in. And I'm saying, what? Oh, it's like the presidential suite. And I went, well, what are kids doing in a presidential suite of a casino? And they're like, one of them said, oh, I wish I could take my wife. Like, she would just be blown away by this room. And I'm like, hello? Teenagers on a Tuesday night in the casino? Like, get them out. And they're like, oh, you know, they really didn't make a thing of it. And I said, anyway, well, you need to tell my son he needs to get his ass in the car, essentially, is what I said, and come home, end of. And they came back down. They said, oh, no, he's really upset that you've turned up here. And I said, good.
Yeah.
because it's not okay. And they said, yeah, no, we really have to respect his wishes. He doesn't feel like coming home now tonight because you've, ruined the night. And I went, it's a Tuesday night. He's got exams tomorrow. He's underage. There's other minors. Like, get him out and tell him to get in the car and come home. And they went, yeah, we just can't do that. And I was like, I just had this, like, moment of what? Like, what? But we've become so... We've got to pander to these teenagers. They
the
know
police
it.
as well would probably be thinking that they are also in the gun. It's a complex issue. It's charged. They don't want to get involved. Everyone's scared to act. Everyone's scared that they're going to end up, they'll go in there. They'll end up mobile phones. They'll end up on TikTok. And,
100%.
It's just all this nonsense which just degrades the sort of quality of respect that we have for each other in a society.
Exactly. And so, to finish that story off, and this is what I'm seeing more and more and more, is then that teenager, whether it be my son or anybody else. I know a mother I spoke to last night in a similar situation with what happened with her child. But what they'll do is they'll find a friend or a family or somewhere where it's okay, where you can do that. So he found somewhere that's, they've got a similar age and they're like, oh, no, that's okay. Just come and stay with us for a few days. And then it turns
like
into...
an enabler sort of.
An enabler,
someone who,
We don't mind if you don't go to school. We don't mind if you're up all night. We don't mind if you do this. Like, yeehaw. And I know a lot of people will resonate with this that have been involved. I was not ever in a parenting matter. I was very lucky to not have to go through the family court. But I've seen it where there's one parent that's like, let's call them, for argument's sake, Disney dad. They create Neverland and you can play video games for 12 hours, stay up all night, like anything goes. And the parent trying to say, hey, listen, you have to eat your vegetables, be in bed by 9:30, shut off the phone. They're the bad guy. But what these teenagers...
And it doesn't take long before the kids
they
work it out the system
They're
and work
so
out.
smart.
Yeah.
They're so smart. In a maths class recently, a group of the teenage boys, they're doing this online making a fortune, some online thing. Let's call it thing. That's how educated I am around technology. But,
like an app or something.
it's some sort of drop shipping.
Okay.
And so the maths teacher turned around because there are all these Andrew Tate fans, and schools are now actively putting in programs to drive out Andrew Tate. There's a lot of money being injected into this. That's a whole nother set of videos. Do you know who Andrew Tate
of course
is?
I do, yeah.
And I like a lot of what he says, and I know that's very controversial because I'm a woman, but I actually support a lot of what he says. But anyway, in any case, these boys are sitting in the maths class, and they said to the teacher, oh, what have we got on? Oh, yeah, you've got to finish this. And so the boys are all doing their little side hustle, they're drop shipping or whatever it is. And the teacher says to them, I just don't think that you're concentrating. I don't think you guys are just like, put down your devices, concentrate on maths. This is what we're doing. And they said, oh, sir, how much do you make? Like, what do you clear? What's in your hand after tax, this week? And the teacher was like, oh, I don't know, $1,650. And one of the kids turned around and said to him, well, we just made that in 20 minutes in your class that you said that we're not concentrating in. We know how to math, bro.
Yeah.
And I was like, what could that teacher say to that?
Well, this is where I think, what you want to get into. I mean, look, that's where I think people would say that's a result of Andrew Tate type education, because that's my probably only disagreement with Andrew Tate. And it's not. It's all.
What do you not like about him?
Well, it's all taken. It's all the context, right? I think for starters, no one listens to the full 3-hour podcasts. They listen to the snippets, which are aggressive and arrogant and, in my opinion, very based on superficial values, money, cars, physique, and just dominating other people, which I think this is where masculinity, where they add the toxic part to it, because I think masculinity is something that is under fire. but it's really the toxic part that they were trying to eliminate,
Yep.
you know, because it isn't right to push. I mean, if you're strong and you're able, you should be helping others and you should be educating and caring. And he doesn't strike me as that. But that doesn't mean that he's not done a whole lot of good in the world and people haven't got themselves out of a hole because of it. You've just got to know it's balance, right? You've got to know you've got to have your warlord warrior, and you've also got to have your monk, you know.
Yep.
And a good man should be able to have access to all those emotions and all those people inside of him, and be able to use, when appropriate, the right sort of personality.
I agree. I think what people or kids are hooking onto is that he is trying to promote the idea of thinking outside the box. And we're so boxed in. We're born into this. We're almost born into a system. We're born into a system. And the second someone's standing up and saying, you know, you can do it differently. He really pushes that entrepreneurial, self-made, don't get stuck in the don't get stuck. But perhaps the way he goes about it, you know, like you say, is
And I don't think that like I've seen my son listen to his stuff a few times, and he doesn't necessarily get the right message. The message he gets is that he needs to be really strong, walk around with his shirt off, and smoke a cigar and tell everyone else to fuck off.
Wow.
But really what Andrew Tate's message was one of independence and one of, you know, it's like and he's a very smart educator. Like he's read a lot of books. None of these kids are reading the books. None of these kids, you know, and that might be an example of someone making some money with drop shipping. I guarantee most of them aren't making anything. It's a lot harder to make money out there than anyone is, anyone that's trying to tell you it's easy is lying to you.
100%.
And I think that I've watched a lot of different people, you know, a lot of different influencers, but I think that there is definitely a need for masculinity. There's definitely a need for, you know, mums and dads, and the traditional sort of marriage I still think has some value. You know, the definite and as a single mum with going through what you're going through, surely, you know, all the questions and things start rolling. Well, is this because of this? Is this because of that? And I can only imagine that it's bloody tough, you know.
And I think we do need to go back to those old-fashioned ways. We really, so much as I know we're gaining so much with what technology is bringing, and we can share and so-called connect, and there's a lot of pros to this all happening. But the disconnection, I'm talking proper connection, person to person, the ability to speak, to connect, to empathize, like that real connection is getting lost.
Absolutely.
And that is so vital to wellness, to mental health, to success, to your own sense of peace and happiness, and that is getting lost along the way. So there's got to be somewhere in between where we're not, you know, leaning all one way. Andrew Tate, what colour's your Bugatti? But at the same time, we don't have to be stuck in this old mindset that we work between 9 and 5, and you know, we do need a bit of flexibility about what success is, because it's not one way or the other.
The thing is, it's back to exactly what happened with what we're saying with your court case, is this know your enemy, right? It's about understanding the way the world works. And I see it with every girl that I meet that doesn't need a man that's under 30, but every girl over 30 needs one.
Yeah,
you know, and it's like, well, why is that? Is it truly that you've just been misled and you've woken up to the fact?
Yeah.
Or is it that you were sold some sort of lie? Why is it that every guy thinks that women are, you know, a certain way, and then when they get older they realize they're not, you know, we want, you know, guys are wanting, you know, all these impossible women, just like women are wanting impossible men. They just don't exist. And we're sort of just, we're standing on two sides of an aisle, looking at each other and coming up with all these ideas. But as you just said, like, nothing beats, because we're looking at each other through these screens rather than actually talking. your dating apps and your social media. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I've got friends that are younger than me, in their early 20s, and they are really quite average communicators without sort of like being harsh, but they're not great communicators. But they're amazing at expressing themselves on texts, and they're very lengthy with their text messages, and it's just text. And if you ask them, they're communicating all day, but they're never really looking into anyone's eyes and really connecting, like you said,
and triggering any sort of response, any sort of human reaction, because it's all but. I've really enjoyed when I look at all of the chapters. Part of why I think people are so drawn to celebrities, now it's more, I guess you want to call it influencers, is what kids are drawn to. But in our day, like I said to my son, Elle Macpherson, something about Elle Macpherson. He said, Elle Mc-who?
Yeah.
And I was like, Macpherson. He goes, what? Who's she? And then I was like, supermodel, Elle Macpherson, what do you mean? It was so foreign to me that he didn't know who she was. And then he looked her up on Instagram and went, she's nobody. And I was like, she was like, one of Australia's greatest exports, as far as a supermodel was concerned. And then she went on to do massive business. Like, she's a power. She's an absolute power. And to say, to look on Instagram and just go, she's nothing, I thought, wow, like that's what young people now are measuring by how many Instagram followers you've got.
Well, everyone, see, we live in a, I think Andy Warhol had it backwards when he said everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. I think it's more everyone will be private for 15 minutes. You know what I mean?
It's going to go that way.
And I think there's a influencer, if you want to call him that. He's a comedian that I follow, and he just clocked up 600,000 followers. And he did a post actually today, and he was talking about how, it's all you're doing is the work of content creation for free for a company to sell ads on your behalf, and you don't get anything out of it. And even with that many followers, 600,000. It's not really anything. It's not enough to have it's not enough to be full. You still have to have a full-time job.
Wow.
And there's girls that'll just wear a bikini and have 2 million followers. I mean, there's AI with millions. There's AI.
Was before my time.
There's artificial. Yeah, that's right. But I think that's also a good thing. Because it's sort of, I don't know. It's sad in a way.
It is sad, but like the celebrities that I've met along the way, what I've loved about it is that they are people, and this is old school, why we used to be drawn to, celebrity culture, I think. They're people that are the best in their field, and there's a reason why they were the best, because there was something about them. There was an X factor. Before phones, before technology, before Instagram, they walked into a room and there was something about them. I met Drew Barrymore, and oh my gosh, can I tell you, like, I still think about her and smile because of the feeling I got. Not because of not her followers or her she shines from the inside out, and you feel it. It's not anything that you can explain. It's a feeling, and you understand why she's a megastar. Celebrities usually back then were like the highest versions of themselves, and that's why they became celebrities. Now the measure for success is really, when you think about it, how well you can market yourself. It's become a competition of who is better at PR, campaigning, clicks, who knows how to get the views. That's what it's about. It's not necessarily the talent or the person themselves. It's the person that's able to market that talent. So we're losing those people.
That's just the state of the world, isn't it? Like in every single thing, it's the state. Like now that you have access to everything, it's almost overwhelming, and some people don't really want to be and it's discouraging, right? Like, for example, let's say I brought this up last week. If I have everything, if not more, than George Lucas had to make Star Wars in my iPhone. Yep. I have more tools than he had and I could do probably a better film with that phone than he did, right? But I don't really need to. It's kind of already done, and someone can do it better. And we find it's harder to make our mark in the way. Even me doing this podcast, I still look at other people's podcasts and go, man, this guy had Kanye West on. You know, like this guy had Elle Macpherson on. Yeah. I have to be comfortable in, and this is where you go back, that circular lesson that we were talking about before, is if you're not able to make yourself happy, then you're going to struggle to get anyone else to do it for you.
That's right. And on getting big names onto your platform and onto your podcast, I know the darkest moments that I had through all of these different challenges, in particular the ones I faced in that book. I listened to people that weren't necessarily well known. I read a lot of spiritual books. I got into this chapter in my life where I wanted to learn and I wanted to understand and I wanted to know, how do I deal with depression? How do I deal with anxiety? How do I deal with fatigue? How do I deal with rage and anger that I can't process? Because back then I couldn't afford a therapist. So like, it was these kind of like what you're doing, it was these kind of things that actually helped me. I'd come across, a lady talking about how to survive being a single mum, and I'd be glued to it for 2 hours and it would literally have changed my week or my month, and I felt less alone. So I don't think the impact, even though, you don't have a massive wide reach yet, I think you'd be surprised at the amount of healing and the amount of connection that can come from people sharing their stories.
Well, I wanted to ask you, I didn't get to it, but when you're part of your sort of revival, when you turn things around, I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were on the medication, the antidepressants and all that, because that seemed to be pretty heavy. And then that decision that sort of, and then weaning you off. I mean, what's your sort of stance on that area? Is it Yep. Do you have feelings about that?
Yeah, massive feelings and opinions around that, because I'm a big believer in medication. I'm a big believer in getting off that medication when you can. So if I did not have that medication at the time, there is no way I would be here sitting right with you now and telling the story. There is only so much that human beings can take. And if you expose someone to so much trauma and then tell them how they're supposed to respond or deal or, feel about that trauma, that just creates more and more and more trauma. And quite often, people will go through these difficult things and they're so worried that they look crazy. And a psychologist said to me once, do you know any normal person that went through, this particular situation, whatever it is that, we're referring to, would feel a little crazy afterward because what happened was not normal. Let's start normalizing going a bit crazy. Let's start normalizing anger. We are human beings. If something happens, we're allowed to be angry. We are allowed to feel and experience anger. It's just how we process it and deal with it. We're allowed to be sad. We're allowed to fall into depression. This is all part of a response to something traumatic happening. That something traumatic for some people could have been in their childhood, and then it's only rearing up in their 30s, 40s, 50s. There are a lot of people that only when they get to our age are realising, oh, I actually have been exposed to trauma or a dysfunctional relationship with my sibling, with my parents, with my grandparents, whatever the story might be within the family unit. They're only realising that it was an unhealthy dynamic later in life. So there's lots of different responses to trauma we can have. Now, if we tell people that they just need to suck it up and deal with it, we're going to get a lot of people suppressing how they feel down. So for me back then to say to my doctor, I'm so anxious, my anxiety is peaking at such a rate that when I dip down and I'm not anxious, I'm then falling into depression. So I was either really, really heightened, like, yeah, oh my God, that anxious, awful feeling like you've had 10 coffees. I was either like that, or I was flatlined, can't get out of bed, depleted, that real dark, why are we put on the earth? What are we even here for? What's the point of life? Blah, blah, blah. So what I found back then was when I treated, I made the anxiety not so high, the depression not so low, and I tried to get a balance there. And for a period, because things were so ridiculous, what was happening to me, getting that medication balance was really difficult. And I nearly lost my life as a result of that. But then my biggest goal became, okay, the trauma's over. The gorilla's not knocking on the door anymore. How do I now move forward and get off that because I don't need it anymore? And weaning my way, because there's a lot of stigma around mental health and people getting help. And, Australians, we're at an all-time high at the moment for people being medicated for depression. I think we do have to look at why is that. I'm not saying – because I want someone to listen to this and say if they're depressed and they need a little bit of help and they need to go see their doctor, it's okay, but it's super important to get to the root cause of why that is so that they can flush that wound out and hopefully not.
And have that goal of living, of getting back to, I think for you, the thing I liked about your story was that you recognize that this is not how you want to live.
No.
And you tried everything and you started then trying different methods and you got some mentors and you got onto some, some reading and some meditation and some therapies that actually made you, that helped you get back to, I guess, medication free or off those antidepressants. And
it was the best. It was strangely, it was the best feeling in the world getting on antidepressants because I was so depressed.
Right.
It was the best feeling in the world getting off antidepressants because I became so numb.
Right.
So both of the experience taking them and the experience stopping them was both good experiences. Like I remember going, I can feel again because I'm such a feeling person. And then I remember being really, I don't want to feel numb all the time. Like I wasn't that happy, but I wasn't that sad. I was just like, bleh. And that's not me because I'm a vibrant person. So, but for a period, I needed to level things out and not be too up and not be too down because I was in trauma. I was in complete trauma. But I think we have to look at why are Australians taking antidepressants at a rate like never before. The statistics came out last week and they were astronomical.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Is it any particular cohort, like young men, young women,
No, it was very broad.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why? Why?
Yeah. I think also, I'd say that it's a case of doctors probably getting in trouble for saying this, but I'd say it's probably easily handed out. And I know that when I've been to the doctor recently for something unrelated, it was I don't go very often to the GP, and when I did go, it was a very it was a tick and flick situation. It wasn't a proper advice. I didn't feel like I was being cared for or, my whole, let's get to the source of this. It was, and I think maybe there's a little bit of lack of education around that as well as to, people having problems in their life and giving them the solution,
Well, you think about it, if the walls are closing in and the pressure's high, the cost of living's astronomical, we've got all of these external pressures happening as a result of what's happening in society now, and people have just got to keep on keeping on. We're not robots. At some point, they're going to go, I'm stressed, I can't sleep, I can't handle the pressure, I'm depressed. They're not going to seek out natural therapies, or they're not going to be in the position to say maybe I just need to take 4 weeks off and go to Fiji and just reset.
I also think that maybe, and I don't totally unqualified to say this, but often in these situations where something is becoming a problem, the bar is sometimes being lowered. So, for example, I know with ADHD medication when it exploded in Western Australia, that was a case of any sort of situation was being diagnosed or treated with that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And
Yep.
and I think that people doing a lot of self-diagnosing now on the internet and, you know, Dr. Google going in to see the doctor and just basically telling them what it, you know, saying the right words to just say, well, this is what. And again, I don't know, but I would say that the standard of what they're diagnosing would have to be looked at as well, as to say, well, are we lowering the bar here? Are we making this? Are we looking at what people eat? I've found that diet is probably one of the number one causes of illnesses and mental, you know, it affects you mentally massively. So, you know, I've never been asked what I eat by a doctor. You know, and I know my dad, who's diabetic, has never been asked what he eats by a doctor and never had never even understood it. As an older guy now, it's too late, unfortunately, for him to really change a lot. But it's, you know, 30, 40 years of just bad advice on diet, you know, and hasn't ever really been educated on the difference between carbs and proteins and fats, you know.
Because it's old school, right? It's just go and see the doc, get something, whatever can keep me keeping on, and it's just a quick fix, but it's coming at such enormous cost to everybody. People are not well. Generally, they're not well. People that I speak to, I don't know, maybe it's the people I speak to, but they're tired, they're fatigued, they've had enough, they need a break. I don't feel like I'm connecting with a ton of people that are thriving. And I'm a pretty positive person. It's not like I'm, you know, doom and glooming.
And your circles are people who are similar-minded.
Yep. Completely motivated people. But generally I'm sensing that people are feeling like their backs are getting pushed up against a wall and they're getting quite tired of the rat race and looking, look, we want to do things differently. We want, you know.
Well, everything's a rat race as well. Like your rat race used to just be your corporate 9 till 5, getting to and from work. That was the rat race. Now it's, you know, $100 a month to watch TV, and it's Uber Eats, and it's price of food, and it's, you know, on the weekend, you know, you don't go to a picnic and have a barbecue with your mates. You've got to spend $300 or $400 on and it's just the tax of the cost of everything is one thing, but the things we as a society now have at our disposal for entertainment are also just so expensive. For example, tonight, my kids have the night off school, and they will say, okay, well, we got Thursday night off. Let's go and do something as a family together. And the idea was floated of going to the shops, and I thought, that's just going to cost me $500.
Like the shopping, like as in the shopping centre?
As in the shopping centre. Like, because in Queensland, you only have late night shopping on a Thursday. So in being from Melbourne, it was quite easy to do that. But my daughters, and, you know, I've got 2 daughters, and I'm thinking, there's going to be a $500 trip.
At least.
Let's just get a movie. That's what we would have done back in my days.
Blockbuster,
just get
$6.
a VHS, you know. So I think there's also the fact that everything costs. You want to go for a coffee now, it's like, you know, you don't go around someone's house for a cup of tea. You meet at a cafe.
So true.
You know,
it's so true. And you're paying $7 for a coffee.
Everything's
What
just
about
costly.
go for a drive?
Yeah.
Remember you used to say, hey, let's just go for a drive, and you might drive to Mount Tambourine or the beach or whatever. Let's just go for a drive, get some fish and chips. That's $10.
Fish and chips is still one of the few things that hasn't been destroyed by inflation. I got a burger the other day with the lot. It was $9. I thought, if you go to grill, that's going to be $20.
Where'd you get a burger for that?
Just at the fish and chip shop, the old style fish and chip shop. They still do them for like $9.50.
They're hanging in there.
Yeah,
they're hanging in there. The last bit of Australia that's left.
It is. Yeah, no, it's but I still do go for a drive as well. I think about that. And there's a lot of joy in cranking the music and having a sing along with the family in the car. But it's not the first thing that springs to mind. You know?
No. And kids, and you know what else they're not getting the opportunity to do, and I think this is largely due to devices. Last year I was creating a program. I've put it on pause at the moment, but it was a tech detox for kids.
Right.
And it was because the best ideas that I've come up with, whether it be business or life, have been when I lay there in nothingness. And even now, I can't remember the last time actually last night I made myself for 20 minutes lay in nothingness because I thought I'm coming on here to talk to you today and I want to have a moment of a clear head where – I speak to God and I say, please let me be of service, bring the words and bring the topics to me that are going to reach people that need someone to carry the torch and that need some support, and, did a little prayer and just laid there in my nothingness instead of scrolling. And I don't do that enough, and I know kids don't do it at all. And you can see there's videos of kids you take the iPad off them. There's a one that's gone viral, and it's a compilation of like 4 and 5-year-olds where they're taking the iPads off these kids, and the meltdown is like, just disproportionate to. Yeah, that used to be if you didn't get them a lolly in the lolly aisle at Coles when you're shopping. They have a little tantrum, throw themselves on the floor. But you take an iPad away from these kids and they're just like, they're ready to kill someone.
Yeah. I always say to the children and to myself that, like, boredom is the precursor to creativity.
Oh, yes.
If you're not bored,
yes,
you'll never think your own thoughts. So we can't have our own thoughts until we go through that little piece, and it only takes a minute or two. Boredom doesn't stick around that long. You're staring out the car window and suddenly all the clouds start making alligators and lions and tigers. Well, that doesn't happen unless you just go, your brain kicks into creative mode,
One of the things that I learned from my complete and utter meltdown, breakdown, lose everything, rock bottom, was that the simplicity was bliss, and that simple things like just sleeping a full night, eating a good meal, being able to walk on the beach for a couple of hours and then stretch and wear myself out, like really basic stuff, was like how I rebuilt, how I became well. Is just actually, it wasn't what I added into my life. It wasn't adding people, adding support, adding things, getting money. It was actually taking it all out.
Of course.
It was stripping the tree down to its absolute core and then going, okay, what do I need? So, no, there's all these little tricks and tips that I feel have come about as a result of the pressure that I've been under, but they're actually pearls of wisdom that I've been able to use to help myself and then, to help other people. That's my intention, is always to go, what did I learn from this and how can I share it? How can I reach wide and far?
Cool. All right. Well, let's just finish on that and just say that this book, guys, if you want to get this book, it's at reneeeaves.com. ReneeEaves.com, is that right?
ReneeEaves.com.
I'll put the link down below. I've loved it. I've read it. I don't normally read books very quickly, so I'm nearly through it. I've only got a little bit to go, and I thought it was really great. And it's an Aussie story. Like, I love that it's actually a story that matters because it happened here. And I think that, as I've said before, you're very resilient and quite a tough woman. You've been through a lot and you've come out so amazing at the other side of it and helped lots of people. So thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm actually waiting for Margot Robbie to call me back about that book. So I'm just putting it out to the universe. Margot Robbie, if you're watching this, please call me back.
Thanks. All right. Well done.
Thanks, Thank you for the tears.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was a good chat.